Listen, the ACC officiating. Let's just go ahead and talk about it. I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know that if
Leave.
Florida. Well, yeah. Say it one more time.
Leave.
But here's the thing, though. I don't watch enough games from other conferences to know if it's this bad everywhere. But it is so
It's not.
awful.
It's not. And I watched the game with a Big Ten fan who I did a lot of complaining about the refs too. And he says, I get it because anytime there's a bowl game and there's ACC officials reffing those games, Big Ten teams are like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. So it's not just the ACC thing at this point.
It's third and Nole. We came together, all three of us reaching for one common goal. This is our show. Listen, you might get perspective of something that you didn't know. We gonna go all the way real with the topics. When you see Whitty, P. Austin, and Crockett, pressure good blisters, we stay in the pocket. Picture the run to the quarterback option. Organic process, listen and watch us. Everyone welcome, this is our casa. First and goal, second we throw. Short a few yards, third and Nole.
8-0 edition of Third and Nole. Wake Forest recap is here. Croc, Phil, man, the top 5 team, number 4 team in the country, 8-0 in the rankings, 8-0 on the record book, and number 4 in the rankings. We have to recognize Wake Forest has beat us 3 years in a row, and it's hard for those words to escape my mouth. But they've had our number, man, and to go up there and dominate the way we did feels good. What's happening, guys?
Man, smooth intro. About as smooth as the game that we witnessed this weekend. It's just great to be 8-0. It's great to be a Nole, man. It's great to be a Nole, ready to dive into this. Really shouldn't be a long pod. Ain't really much to discuss. But nonetheless, it should be exciting.
I agree, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
So let's dive in. Florida State travels up to Wake Forest to take on the Demon Deacons, and Dave Clawson and his Deacons have given Florida State trouble. That slow mesh. I sometimes am woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat thinking about Sam Hartman and a slow mesh offense, given our defensive fits, right? Like it's just happened. We've seen it too often. Obviously, having a quarterback like Hartman makes that offense work a little bit more efficiently. But you felt optimistic. We all felt optimistic going into the game, but it's still a team that's beaten us 3 times in a row. And historically, we don't play well up there, even when we had really good teams, right? So
True.
I don't know if you guys remember. I remember back, let's call it early 2000s. I feel like every time we went to Wake Forest, we had a really good player get hurt. Like I'm pretty sure Greg Jones tore his ACL there at Wake Forest. It was just like every other year we would go to Wake Forest, we'd have a good player go down with an injury. So it was a little bit of a curse there. I don't know what Snuggy Hill, what burial grounds that was built on. But anyway, I guess you didn't know what to expect, but Florida State went up and took care of business. Came out looking good and really never slowed down. Well, I can't say they didn't slow down. We'll talk about that. But, yeah, man, good game.
Yeah, I love the way the boys came out. They look clean, the icy white jerseys.
Icy whites.
And I'm a traditionalist as far as uniforms go. But I like those whites, man. I like those whites. They look good. And for the most part, they played good. It's just one of those teams. And I think I had a come to Jesus moment this week. I was wondering, why am I at times fighting disappointment even though we're getting W's and covering spreads? And I realize, I guess in my mind, when I think of Florida State having a good to great team, I automatically go to some of our all-time great teams. And I'm looking to see that dominance from start to finish. And while this is a really good team and still have the possibility to complete all of its goals that are set in the beginning of the season, it's unfair to compare this team to other teams. This is 2023 Florida State, and they're winning the way they win. Great game. I don't know if I want to dive in with the O or the defense.
Croc, I think one of the things you touched on, look, I mean, You're right. It's really unfair, and I think you look back to the most recent dominant FSU team, right? So just go back to 2013. Outside of Boston College that year, Florida State really stepped on the neck of everybody they played in, right? And I think, unfortunately, due to Auburn stealing signs in the first half of that game, it doesn't get the respect that it probably deserves. Because if it had blown Auburn out, it would be mentioned with the all time teams, the 2001 team, Miami team, the USC team, the LSU team. It'd be talked about in the same conversation. It certainly had the talent to be part of that conversation, but I think that the Auburn game being close kind of put a funk on the legacy of that particular team. So, but when you're comparing 2023 FSU to even going back 10 years to the 13 team, it's one of those things that I think that we have to college football and the parity, especially with the transfer portal and NIL and all these things that happen. You just look at what Florida State has done in 2.5 years, right? Mm-hmm. That tells you everything you need to know about how expectations can be diminished. Georgia, as good as they were last year, did have some scares, right? I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, I just think that the parity in college football now is as level as we may ever see it due to the transfer portal. And I don't know that you will see teams that were organically grown or arguably bought and paid for in some instances, like some of the good teams of the past. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about the 2023 edition of this Wake Forest Florida State game. What were some things that you liked and some things that you didn't like, especially at the start of the game?
I mean, offensively, there's not much that I didn't like. I mean, I feel like it felt like Florida State made their mind up really early that they were going to use the short pass game to replace trying to run the ball, which I'm fine with. And so I think that was a welcome thing to see.
Yeah, because it's really not something we've displayed much this year, right?
No. We've almost tried to force the issue at times. So it was a welcome sign to see. Defensively, I feel like, we did a pretty good job. I mean, the defense, they did what they do outside of getting, and we'll talk about the second half later. But I mean,
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I feel like we dominated, even though it didn't feel like it at times. Like you said, with parity in today's game, whenever Florida State's back is against the wall, except for Boston College, we go on a run like it's a basketball game. We go on a 17-0, 23-0, 31-0, 38-0 in one sense. Like, we go on a run. And I feel like outside of Michigan, I don't think there's another team that displays dominance and stretches like we do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, I don't. What was the spread for this game? Do either of you know?
20.
Okay, so we covered the spread. We won by 25. You're right, Phil. The team going on runs that they do. I mean, the 30 points in a row. Obviously, that got broken. We are now the team with the longest streak of 30-plus point games after Penn State failed to meet that against Ohio State. And we hit it in the first half, right? So it's just one of those things that, in the first half, the yardage disparity was just insane. Florida State at the end of the first half had 351 total yards. Wake Forest had 77. The game was over.
Yeah.
And I think they called it pretty early on when Clawson decided to kick a field goal or attempt a field goal rather than go for it. Even the announcers were just like, yeah, this tells you the mindset of the coaching staff. So it was pretty crazy. So in the first half, it's one of those games where it's really kind of hard to identify things that stood out, right? It was not a game in which, outside of Keon Coleman being Keon Coleman and him having his that one-handed catch was just ignorant. Yeah, just
almost
stupid.
unnecessary. It was almost unnecessary.
he's just showing off at this point, right? I mean, one of the
It was necessary. It was necessary because that cornerback was talking trash to start that game. That cornerback was talking trash.
Seatbelt,
well,
that was a seatbelt guy.
Yeah, that was
Yes, the seatbelt guy.
They said 2 potential first round picks going to get. Yeah, they called that out early, right? Like, this is 2 potential first round picks going. This will be the matchup to watch. And Keon said, "Watch me." And they even tried. They tried to give some shine to him early in the game when they said something about, like, "Oh, he's catching the ball, but he gets tackled immediately." Like, no. That's not how you want to be mentioned if you're the DB, that you gave up a catch but you made a good tackle. Like, Keon Coleman, just for a second, I want to ask this question to you guys, and it's an open-ended question. I want to hear what your guys' answer is. Keon Coleman is the best wide receiver since blank.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Your guy, P-Dub, and this is why, because that intro when they kept mentioning that other cornerback, it gave me flashbacks to a particular game that I know Whitty is going to love. Do you remember Peter Warwick's last year when they played North Carolina? North Carolina was ranked, and Dre Bly was the top cornerback in the nation. And all they talked about was this matchup of Dre Bly and Peter Warwick. And Peter Warwick went out and gave him the business. And I just could not help but flash back to that game. Like, okay, like this is eerily similar. This is very similar.
I like that pick. I'm interested to see what Kelvin Benjamin's numbers were. Yeah, Peter Ward.
I agree. It's just unbelievable what Keon Coleman has done. Like, you think about that. Listen, I'm not going to slight Rashad Green. Rashad Green was a very good wide receiver for Florida State, a very productive wide receiver for Florida State. But Rashad Green, just from a physicality standpoint, just didn't have the body type that Keon Coleman has that translates to the NFL. There's things that on Rashad Green's best day couldn't do some of the things that Keon Coleman does. So I agree with you, and Phil, just for the old S's and G's, if I go back and look at, I'm trying to find that particular year.
Well, why you look it up? It's crazy because 2 points that both of y'all made, like when you talk about comparing, racing for greatness and comparing this team to 13, right? And the parity, like that 30-point record that we're now in second place for, and the number we're chasing is 17, right? To break the record. The team that has 17 is the 13-14 Florida State Seminoles. So it's just to show you, it's like, you're right. And compared to 13, no, we're not dominant. But in 2023, it might be time for us to accept it. Like, this may be as dominant as it can get.
Yeah, that's a good point, Phil. So back to my question, when I say Keon Coleman is the best wide receiver since, when you think about what he has meant to this team, and I think coming into this year, we knew what Johnny Wilson was and what he could be, and we thought about Keon Coleman as a good complement to Johnny Wilson. But I don't know that, not until he got here and we started hearing some of the reports, I don't know that we thought necessarily that he was going to be wide receiver 1, right? Like, I think that we assumed that Wilson was going to be the guy, and Keon would be a great counter to that. But I don't have much hesitation in thinking in my mind that Keon Coleman is not only the best wide receiver in Garnet and Gold, he's the best wide receiver of the last 20 years in Garnet and Gold, and he's the best wide receiver in the ACC in several years, like in the entire conference. Like, he's that type of guy at wide receiver, and it's just unbelievable to factor in like what he's meant to this team.
Yeah, I mean, just sheer dominance and consistency. I think he is no knock to Johnny, because Johnny is also having a great year. but because Keon's hands are a little more consistent, he is the player coming out of the spring we thought Johnny was going to be, you know. And Johnny is still dominant. So having both of them on each side, and we was wondering like how's this even going to work? Pure dominance. I will say Benjamin was a force. Kelvin Benjamin was a force to be reckoned with on that 13 team. So most recently, I would say Kelvin Benjamin, but I think a better impact and comparison would be Peter Ward.
Well, maybe it's the punt return aspect too, because even this past weekend, he had a couple where he didn't do much with it, but he had a couple where almost like, hey, shout out to Deuce Spann real quick. You can almost see that Tamarick Vanover-ish quality with him. And it's one of those where when we're receiving a kickoff now, you don't want to be getting a drink. You don't want to be getting a drink whenever because he was a couple inches away from having another enormous return.
You can see the confidence. You can see the confidence Saturday with Spann.
I'll tell you that my friend Tim sent me a text message, and he said that this Florida State team is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside of an enigma. Like, we look sloppy, but we dominated a team that has historically given us trouble, right? And there's so much truth in that. But I think back to the point, though, in this day and age, with the type of team that we're playing, just win, man. I think just winning is important. Like Oklahoma, they would love to say just win and we're in, right? And this season, as we continue to go forward, there's going to be teams that drop off and lose games they shouldn't. And if Florida State can just continue to win, I think we'll be okay.
I want to say one more thing about Keon that you brought up in the punt return aspect. Because after losing Pittman, that was one of our biggest questions. Like, Pittman's sure hands when fielding punts. Like, who's going to do that? And I believe I've heard, as far as special teams, we're in the top of the nation, you know, with special teams. And a lot of that has to do with Keon, you know. So, yeah, man, just his impact on the team. I think that P-Dub comparison, if anybody can be compared, you know, I think sense is a good way of putting it. Sense, Peter Ward.
Much respect. Now, I don't know what our defense was doing, giving up any points in the second half. Like, what's happening, guys? Completely, you know. It was, you know, we talked about it last week where we went 2 full games without giving up any points, or 3 straight games without giving any points in the second half. And then obviously we give up some points. Listen, the ACC officiating, let's just go ahead and talk about it. I don't know what the solution is. And I don't know
Leave.
that if Florida, well, yeah. Say it one more time.
Leave.
But here's the thing though. I don't watch enough games from other conferences to know if it's this bad everywhere. But it's not awful.
It's not. And I watched the game with a Big Ten fan who I did a lot of complaining about the refs too. And he says, I get it, because anytime there's a bowl game and there's ACC officials reffing those games, Big Ten teams are like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. So it's not just the ACC thing at this point.
Yeah, man. It was bad.
In-house. It's not just in-house complaints.
It's not. It's not.
So a couple of them. Okay, so they called the horse collar in the second half on us, but completely twice. Completely ignore, and they kind of went out of their way to try to over-explain it. Like, well, if it's anywhere near the nameplate. Like, if you're having to do that much of a justification and explanation, like, come on, man. But the second one was, can we get a call? Like, there's a picture floating around. I think Tom Block sent it out that clearly shows when Jordan Travis got horse collared in the first half.
Clearly.
Like, just call
clearly.
Now, I didn't like the offensive pass interference on Coleman.
Nope.
I mean, they were hand fighting the whole way down, and for them to
don't be mad because he got big.
Right. But the the worst in my opinion, and Jordan Travis was 100% right of barking at the officials. You can't, if it's player safety, right, and they've gone over the top about protecting the quarterback, he clearly slides. The guy was behind Travis chasing him. So it's not like you can't claim you didn't see him. But how do they let that go? Where I almost said how they let that slide. Pun not intended, right? But Travis obviously slides, was almost ready to pop up from his slide, gets hit from behind and folded in half. How did they let that go? I don't get it. Like, that was the most egregious in my mind.
I think they checked out. I think, especially when Florida State had the ball, it's like, it's just thrashing. We're just not. And I think sometimes, like, you got to be good at your job. I mean, I've done some minor reffing and stuff like that. And if you're not good at your job, a lot of biasness can just come into it. You know, he's bigger than the guard. I'm not gonna blow that whistle. You know, on in reference to basketball, a foul's a foul.
Foul is a foul. That, you know, to that,
hold. We know we can't call hold on every play, but come on.
That was the thing that used to drive me crazy with the arguments against Shaq, right? And they say Shaq is just too big. Like, it doesn't matter how big he is. You can't penalize him for his size when someone is jumping all over him. Like, so I get your point. And if somebody is a flag should be a flag, a penalty is a penalty. Just call it equal, you know. And I really felt like that gave Wake Forest what they needed to get a few points, especially in the third quarter. Now, Florida State's offense didn't help itself, but man, that was I don't know. I was frustrated with the officiating, and I feel like we say this every game, but come on, man.
Yeah, it's bad, man. It's really, really bad. I mean, and then for all of the obvious holds that everybody gets away with, to call that hold on Poirier's touchdown was just, come on. Like, come on, man. Like,
I hated that for you, Phil.
Come on. Stop talking to me.
Oh, man. So, Mr. Crockett, I'm going to ask if you're still listening to this podcast. And Croc, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to your father.
Yeah, my dad.
Mr. Crockett, at this point in time, I'll ask you to disconnect from this podcast, or at least mute it for the next 15 seconds. I haven't fact-checked this. So now, Florida State has hit its ninth straight week in the top 5. Okay? 9th straight week in the top 5. So 9 straight weeks in the top 5 for FSU, that's a lot. You guys would agree with that, right?
Yes.
For reference, the Miami Hurricanes have only spent 2 weeks ranked inside the top 5 in the last 19 years.
Not the Hurricanes.
2 decades?
Not the Hurricanes.
One of them was a preseason.
Not the Hurricanes.
You know they always getting them hope coming out the preseason.
Oh, my gosh.
So Florida State's doing well. Croc, I think you said it well. This is a game that we really don't have to spend a whole lot of time discussing. Florida State took care of business in a place that they haven't historically. Hey, real quick, because there were quite a few texts exchanged during the game. I'm going to say it. I kind of like Robin Gryffindor announcing the games.
Bro,
you can't take him seriously, but he is funny. Like you.
I will say this year he's funny. Like 2 years ago, I feel like he was trying too hard to be funny. Like, but I think he's grown into his role. Like he's pure entertainment, man. He's pure entertainment.
I know people. I know he's not for everybody, but I would just suggest to anybody, if you don't like him, take him with a grain. Don't take him too seriously. He is very smart at football. Like, he knows football. But what gets under people's nerves are his little comments. But listen, when my man said you could tell it's Halloween because all the Wake Forest fans were dressed up as Florida State fans, talking about how many people traveled.
I lost it. I lost it.
Just
that's a good one.
That he had a couple of others, man. I forget what he said. He said something about going down on the toilet. And I was just like, what is happening? But again, if you don't take him too seriously, it's entertainment. He is entertaining at minimal, right? So I'm trying to look at one of the other things he said that I just cracked up on. He said, "Put that man on his knees like it was a toilet seat." That's what he said. That's just ridiculous. And I think early in the game he said, "Who got the sack?" The whole defensive line. It was like defensive meeting had a meeting in the backfield. So anyway, I'll admit it. I do like listening to Robert Griffin, and I will listen to him 12 times out of 10 over Beth Mowins, who sounds like somebody stepped on a cat and just hollering. So let's jump. Let's do responded.
Ooh.
I think I'm gonna say Phil went first last time, so I'm gonna let Croc.
I did.
I'm gonna let Croc go. Croc go first this time.
All right. Responded. Trey Benson. Trey, first round fantasy pick, Benson. Way to respond. Shifted the game plan a little bit, but when you got the ball in your hands, you made them pay. Even in running, I saw being more decisive. So great way to respond. Respond. Man, the team is playing so good. This is a tough one for me. Man, I don't have one, man. Like, I don't know.
He's just gonna hit us with a nobody. Was the water boy not quick enough to hand out the Powerade or something? I mean, we gotta.
This team is locked, man. Even the O-line played good. Yeah. I don't have one, man.
All right. We're gonna let him get away with it. Phil, who you have?
It's tough. I'm with him, man. This is a tough one. Responded. I would say I don't want to go with the same person 2 weeks in a row, so I'm gonna switch it up. Jeez, this is a tough one. I feel like everybody, you know what, responded. I'm gonna say Patrick Payton. I'm going Patrick Payton. I think he's each game with the attention that their verse is drawing. Peyton, he gets a lot of one-on-ones. He gets a lot of pressures, but I think this was probably his best overall game this year. And so I would go with Peyton from that standpoint. For anybody who needs to respond, you know what? I'm going to say DJ Lundy. Not that the defense was bad, not that he was terribly bad, but I think not just statistically, but just what we're used to seeing from him when he comes on the field. I know he was a little, beat up from last week, but he didn't give us the same Lundy we've received, the previous, 6 games, 7 games. So I would say DJ Lundy.
I can appreciate that. I actually have so many that I could shout out for responded. Responded for me, it's really a tie between Renardo Green because I thought he had himself a heck of a ball game. But I'm gonna give it to Jared Verse because I think from a stat perspective, he had his most impactful game of the year. Now we know he's had impacts in ways that don't make the stat sheet, right? Like I think and I've said this before, I think Braden Fisk might be the most disruptive football player on defense.
Absolutely.
Just for what he brings. Like that kid is an absolute monster, but he doesn't show up in the stat book, like in the stat sheet. So, but this week, Jared Verse showed up in the stat week. He was disruptive. He had a heck of a game. For respond, I'm gonna go with, and this is sort of tongue in cheek. I'm gonna go with our kickers. Fitzgerald finally got him a miss, and that goes straight on Bob Wichushausen or whatever the announcer's name is, because he had just said, Ryan Fitzgerald is perfect on the. Oh, okay, well, there's his miss. Like, right? It's like saying nice swing in somebody's backswing in golf, right? You just don't do that. So yeah, and then our our man Alex Mastromano, he's averaged 48 yards a punt or so, and he did get one down inside the 1 yard line, which is impressive.
That punt was beautiful.
That was beautiful, but his overall average dropped to just a terrible 43 yards per punt, which is unacceptable. It's unacceptable, and
oh my goodness, what is happening?
No, I did say tongue in cheek. No, so that's it really, to your point, Greg. It's hard to nitpick with where we are. You guys want to talk a little fantasy, or
let's see what it's talking about.
I know we had it. Oh, oh my God, 48. Why?
All right.
Weird games again.
Yeah, Thank goodness for my defense.
Croc, what did I say before we went live? So third place this week was Phil. Phil had 50 points, and his defense did, in fact, save the day. Jared Verse had 16. Tatum Bethune had 15 points for you. So Phil had 50. I was in second place this week with 62, thanks in large part to Keon County population. And shout out to Byron Turner. I should have said he responded because he came out of nowhere. He had some. He played well.
He did. He really did.
And then Croc was in first place this week, bouncing back. So I'm going to say 40 points. Croc, does that mean anything to you?
That was my low last week?
No, that's your week over week improvement. So after you put up a bum like 27 last week, you came
off week.
Yeah, you came back with a 67 banger this week.
Light.
So
it's still light. I expect more.
It is light. You better start putting up more points.
Trey Benson. Hey,
didn't I tell you? I talk every week. This is nothing.
You lose almost every week too.
No, almost.
Hey, between Trey Benson and Kalen DeLoach, you have 40 points on those two guys alone. Okay, so you had 67 for the week. Season totals, third place, Phil, 387. And still second place, Croc, at 416.
Bro, you're only up like 29 on me, but you're done. You're baked chicken.
Believe that. I got like 3 people out hurt.
Wilson didn't play. You're baked. Go ahead. I don't want to mess up first place.
I'm still in first place with 426, holding a slight lead. But listen, man, I got one man not even on a roster anymore. So
I had 2 last year not on a roster.
We're still talking about last year. How far back we want to go?
Still talking about last year.
Last year's not that far. Like, I mean, Phil's only relevant because of last year.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, as I continue to catch up,
I don't know. He does still have the crown, Croc. I can't until.
So last year is not too far.
So if I'm only relevant because of last year, you're not relevant at all because you're not even in first place right now.
But I've spent many a week at first place.
Oh, now we're glorifying where I used to be. Man, be quiet.
Hey, listen. I will say that I saw something.
It's always a segment when you go off kilter, man. Always a segment.
Listen, hey, speaking of your boy Croc, your boy Trey Benson, I saw something where he's the only player in NCAA this year to have an 80-yard reception and an 80-yard rush touchdown.
I believe it.
So
I think it's only getting started.
It's going to be scary. Well, let me say this, and we can close out here shortly, but I enjoyed. Earlier this year, I think I may have expressed frustration with not really understanding why we rotated the way we did. It could still be a pivotal point in the game, and I look down and I see Edmund, Ray, I see the entire Byron Turner, I see the entire second team defensive line. Now look at, and in the linebackers, Omar Graham and Lundy, and then I look and I see, I'm seeing all these guys. And I'm thinking, like, this game is still in question. Why do we have the second team defense in there? First of all, I don't know how. Again, I haven't watched a ton of other games. I actually did watch a few yesterday. Miami squeaking by a 2-5 Virginia team. I watched Oklahoma get beat. Like, I did watch some games, but I don't know how many teams can say that early in the first quarter, midway through the first quarter, they got the second team defense in. Norvell's playing the long game, y'all. He knows what he has in this team, and he's trying to keep the rotation fresh so the guys don't get those bumps and bruises and nicks and running up the miles. I really do think he's playing the long game. And for him, I take back what I said. I'm no longer criticizing you, sir. I'm tipping my hat. Well played.
Yeah.
He also knows a good bit of his production is leaving. He has to get these guys ready to play like for next year too. So I love what he's doing. I love what they're doing. It's working. Keep winning. Keep winning. Everything is great when we win. So
Yeah,
keep doing
bro.
what you're doing, coach.
It's the Georgia Bama formula, right? I was listening to Wake Up War Chant this week, and they were talking about that because they were griping about Fabian Lovett not getting enough snaps. And so they did the research. And if you compare Florida State's defensive line, more specifically Fabian Lovett, to UGA's defensive line and their top D lineman, there's only one defensive tackle on Georgia's roster that has played more snaps than Fabian Lovett this season.
Wow.
There's only one defensive lineman on their entire line that has played more snaps than Fabian Lovett. And we know Fabian Lovett is on a pitch count all season thus far.
Facts.
That's the formula, right? And you look at the Eagles in the NFL. Like, we're not their success is we're not going to have that one key rusher or that two. We're going to have 5, 6, or 7. And so every down you have to worry about your quarterback. And we're going to keep rotating them, and they're going to be fresh for the entire game. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's a good point. And to your point, I like what you said. He's not only looking toward a run later this year when it matters, right? Cards on the table is win or go home. But he's building for next year, and to that I can respect it. So, all right, gentlemen, let's do a quick prediction. Florida State plays at Pittsburgh. Hey, I'll make an easy prediction right here, Croc. Florida State scores 30 minimum.
We know that for sure.
I haven't thought a lot about this. I don't think Pitt's a very good football team. It's a cool city to go to. I really enjoyed 2013's trip up there, which I think is the last time Florida State played at Pitt. They play at the Steelers Stadium, so it's not like they go to this small, comfy, small college town stadium. They play at Pittsburgh Stadium, the Steelers Stadium, rather. I am going to say Florida State 38, Pittsburgh 13. 38-13.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm hearing the weather may not be favorable. I don't know if that means just it's going to be freezing or it's going to be snowing. But I mean, I don't. First of all, we win and we're in the ACC championship, so I feel like you may see angry Florida State team. Who knows what's on the line? I'm going 48-10.
Ooh.
Wow.
I'm going 48-10.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna go 41-13. 41-13. 41-13 is where I feel we're gonna hit. Then and every time I say 40, we usually land in the 30s. I'm expecting a dominant performance.
All right, guys. Well, next time we reconvene, hopefully we will discuss our 9-0 start and the automatic bid at that point, locking ourselves into the ACC championship game. Really beyond, we just have one ACC game left, right? Following Pitt, and that's against Miami the following week. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it's at Pitt, home against Miami. Then we have North Alabama and Florida. So anyway, our next podcast will be how we are ACC tournament bound and prepping for the old tropical storms of Coral Gables.
Quick question. How do you guys feel about the fact that there's a reason to watch the playoff show this Tuesday night?
I'm not really. Hey man, Tuesday's Halloween. I'll be out with the kids trick or treating. I'll read the message boards afterwards to hear what everybody is dissected about it.
I just feel like the best thing possible is if they put us at like 5.
Why do you say that?
Because I feel like if they put us at 5, Miami and Pitt will pay dearly for that.
Interesting, but they would have another. But they would have another ranking show before we play Miami. No,
I don't think it'll matter. This team. I feel like this team. They live off of. We know what to expect out of ourselves, and we know that nobody out there really believes we're as good as we know we are.
I can see that. Yeah, I'll read the message boards. I'm not. I don't know. I guess there's an argument to be made. Like, listen, man, after say Oklahoma lost this weekend, so the discussion is they're probably out of the playoff conversation, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the team they beat, Texas could work themselves back in. They're like going to be number 6 or 7, right? So it's just one of those things as a one-loss team. It's just one of those things that it really depends on when you lose, not who you lose to, but when you lose. So if Florida State just has to stay clean, and I think we're going to be fine. Now,
yes,
I would you almost, so I looked at this today. The playoff games are in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl and New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that it works, the number 1 team gets the geographic preference, right? So let's just say, for instance, that Georgia is number 1. They will go to New Orleans, which puts the number 4 team in New Orleans, versus the number 2 and 3 team have to go out to Pasadena, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Washington, which, by the way, Stanford, I don't know if you guys watched that game. Stanford had the ball.
Oh my God.
4th and 2 was driving to take the lead with to win the game. I mean, it was a walk-off opportunity. 4th and 2, the guy dropped the ball with no one within. It was a 4th and 2 play, so they crashed the line expecting a handoff. They passed it out to the tight end. He had no one within 10 yards of him. So it was 5 yards down. He caught the ball, would have been a first down for sure, but he had room to run, like big room to run. Mm-hmm. Dropped it. Washington did not look good. Penix looks good.
The ball 2 weeks in a row.
His hand different. Yeah, 2 weeks in a row. Correct. Now Penix, when he throws the ball, it's beautiful. Like, he throws a very pretty ball, and I can see why he's getting the hype that he gets. But they should have lost this weekend, truthfully. They should have lost last weekend. I don't know that Washington is that team, and everybody says they still got this daunting schedule. I don't know how tough Utah is now. But
they were embarrassed.
So we'll see. Interesting question, Phil. I think if Florida State wins, they're in. I think the higher you can get in the initial rankings, the better chances of not being undercut by some BS at the end of the year. So we'll see.
I think I'm gonna watch it just because we haven't had to pay attention to one since 14. Game control. So I think I'm gonna watch it.
You shut your face. It's funny how game control was literally mentioned. That was only mentioned one season. It was mentioned one season. I ain't heard game control since 2014. But anyway, Croc, you gotta close this out. Give us your final thoughts and then wrap us up.
Guys, enjoy this. Enjoy every minute of it. Enjoy the post game. We're winning. We are winning. We are 8-0. Enjoy it. It's been so long since we could have said that. So just appreciate this team for what it is. We had a lot of pieces out in the passing game. We have an O-line that's starting to gel. We got a defense right now that's playing pretty good. We really don't have a complaint. So let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy this ride and let's continue to climb.